What's hilarious to think about is how genuine our MC actually felt prior to swapping bodies with Yuna. And honestly, joke's on me, I didn't even notice it until I was grabbing my screenshots. The first time it completely slipped past me. He literally has a bloody nose as he's explaining that he has no impure thoughts going into Yuna's body in order to take control and be able to help everyone. And Buddy didn't even second guess it. He walked straight to that mirror and grabbed her thigh, and honestly, the fact that every step of the way it just got twisted on its head. He goes to lock himself in the room to have a naked fun day and everyone comes in for a sleepover. The boy has absolutely no shame and is just the complete degenerate AF mofo that we've come to know and love of this show. But you gotta admit, the fact that someone this sick and twisted in his head didn't even second guess, I mean, we should expect nothing less. But I think the more I watch of this show, The Legendary Hero is Dead, the more I have to say how brilliant the title of the series actually is. I mean, at face value, you're thinking, okay, the legendary hero dies, he takes over the body, that's where the name comes from, but I think it has a double meaning. While yes, the end of the episode does highlight the fact that seemingly the legendary sword has chosen his soul to be the legendary hero, as seen by his body not being able to wield it, but even though he's now in her body, he was able to use the sacred blade. The fact remains, the legendary hero is absolutely dead. He is completely deranged, immoral, and so not pure, and that name has a double meaning that I absolutely love given who Toka is as an MC, and I'm enjoying this show so damn much. Full live reaction to this Degenerate episode is available on my Patreon if you do want to see my full uncut thoughts. So this was a pretty good episode. I quite like the humor and the way they're balancing a pretty hefty supporting cast right now. I mean, in general, we have a pretty relatively small supporting cast, but given the fact that we're focusing on an entire city kind of dealing with a zombified invasion, we do focus on some characters, antagonists, and obviously, a useless mayor and redhead boy who pops up and breaks his ankles in the prior episode and has to stand into an ice bucket to recover his stamina, and then casually gets blasted away. But I love the fact that they're having fun with all these ridiculous personalities, but still doing that balancing act of being just a fan-servicey, degenerate show, but a twist on the hero story and kind of finding that middle ground where you just say, okay, there really isn't a lot like this. Like, honestly, an example of why I really like the general combat and the devil/demons of the world, when you look at the princess, when she does that bow transformation, usually in moments like those, I'm thinking, okay, it's gonna be, she put a crystal into like a sword hilt, and it's gonna be like a laser sword of some sort. And what she ends up doing is she kind of has like this futuristic mechanical bow that then fires like an ice arrow. And honestly, I thought that was rather clever and a lot different than what I was expecting. Or even just the general devil designs that we continue to see. We have the head honcho queen come in with a bunch of her lackeys, and seriously, every time I see these things, they just remind me of Personas, and honestly, as someone who recently played Persona 5 Golden, I mean, I love seeing things that remind me of the cool creations in that game. But I like the fact that, as silly and stupid as this show is, and it wears that on its sleeve, it wears it proudly, it says, we are perverted, we are degenerate, and we are proud of it. But the fact remains is that they don't let a character like that go unfiltered. They always make sure to rein him in before he goes too extreme and leads the show down a completely degenerate path. The fact that the entirety of him swapping bodies was him grabbing or trying to grab or trying to get a peek, he gets blindfolded as he gets scrubbed down in the bath. Like, the most fanservice-y thing in this episode, he wasn't even able to see, only the viewers were. And the fact that he kind of was in that, like, what's wrong with his body as he's getting flustered. Or the fact of, like, when the sleepover happens, and then he gets completely strung up because he tried to take a peek at a princess's legs, and obviously she's definitely prepared for that. But it is funny because they still let the show reach that extra level that he's always hoping, like the fact that the person who apparently ended up teaching a princess how to strip down in a moment's notice, there's a lot of questions surrounding that entire concept, but as our boy says, thank you sir for doing it, she basically has to run around topless as they're fleeing for their life. But the actual story of like these demonic beasts trying to invade a kingdom with this useless mayor who heard rumblings of some people potentially being infected and sat on his ass and did nothing, in very zombie fashion, pretty much the entire village got corrupted. Though, unlike a lot of zombified stories, there actually seems to be a hope that you could probably save everyone who's currently been infected. If we can destroy the person responsible for turning everything, then obviously everyone should go back to normal, and ultimately that's why, because currently they almost act like they are undead, even though their souls are barely still, like, alive right now, which is why the whole necromancy spell was able to be used on her at all. And I like it. The show, it's not anything remarkable in the way that it's like the craziest story I've ever seen, but when I think of, if you really rewind 10 years back, or maybe even to the beginning of 2000, like the 2000 to 2012 stretch of anime, the number of like fan servicey harem shows or battle harems or just kind of perverted shows, they didn't even have half the quality, whether production value or even actually some narrative and character reasons that this show has. And I think it kind of just hits that sweet spot of like, man, we're going back to that degenerate as hell territory, but at the very least stringing you along for more than just side boobs. Like, it gives you that, of course, but there's actually some fun story hooks, and it really does feel like a fresh take on the hero formula that either you know and love, like myself, or you've seen so much you hate it, and you say, well, even if I'm not the biggest fan of the show, I can at least say, yeah, there isn't a lot of hero stories quite like this. And I think despite his perverted attitude, we did get a sense that this man does genuinely care for his friend, his childhood friend, that is, right? And even though it does go completely perverted as soon as he swaps bodies, it doesn't change the fact that we saw a genuine side of compassion there. Like, initially when they hop over the wall, right? I mean, everyone's obviously freaked out for a reason, and the scumbag who ended up handing us over to the perverted bone daddy ends up immediately being like, let's kill her because she's obviously corrupted. And he doesn't second guess. He powers up, sucker punches that fool into the wall, and was ready to kill the entire village if they even tried to lay a hand on her. This really goes to show that in that moment, there was no impure thoughts. It was simply, this is my friend, and whether she turns into a monster or not, I care for her too much for you to do that. And those little moments, while they may not appear every episode, and mostly what we see from this man's perspective is thighs and the stockings if he can put them on thighs, at the end of the day, we see there's actually a genuine bond there. And I like the fact that before going perverted with the nosebleed and everything of the likes, we got to see him genuinely scared of what people would do to someone he deeply cares for and arguably cares for the most out of anyone in this party. Of course, the others are noticeably upset when they realize that he kept it from them, but honestly, even though initially I was confused on why, I actually kind of agreed initially with the thought process, because when you think about it, a necromancer and a princess who can think of things logically of like the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, do you really want to trust your childhood friend and potential crush's life in the hands of people you just met, or are you a little scared of what they might do? It makes sense in the moment, and honestly, I can't say I wouldn't have done the similar thing it put in his shoes. And that's what I like about this episode. Honestly, I would actually argue this is surprisingly one of the stronger episodes out of the 6. Is it the absolute best, or does it define the show as a masterpiece? No, but I think the blend of the perverted meets the actual emotional storytelling while combined with just such wacky situations, it kind of hits all that sweet spot. And at this point, if you're 6 episodes in, if you've enjoyed the show up to this point, I see no reason why you'd really find this to be any different. The monster designs are creative, they have some fun background comedy, like the redhead just casually being in the distance and counting everyone in the room, not even including him, to then casually getting sideswept, and if you watch after the credits, there's about 30 seconds, we see him wake up, and we have the heroes party here, and honestly, I'm interested to see what the hell that means, because that's interesting, because seriously, like, character designs look spitting image of certain characters. Maybe that also plays into why in Yuna's body the hero sword can be used, but at the same time I'm almost curious if it's because it's now connected to his soul as being the legendary hero, or if the sword can actually be used by her specifically. I don't know, I guess we'll see. But let me know what you're thinking down below. Drop a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, ring that bell of course, so you can get notified when I upload on the channel, and like I mentioned, we do have a full live reaction available on my Patreon if you're interested, and while you're there you can also get a video shoutout like Derek Nickel, Bhuwanake, Manukulasuriya, and Chemists are getting today. So I appreciate the support everyone, please take care and have a good one.